Glory to God the Father and Son Yeshua Mashiach. 2 Kings chapter 10. There were 70 descendants of Achav in Shomron. Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Shomron to the rulers of Israel, to the leaders, and to the guardians of Achav's sons. The letters said, "You have with you your master's sons, also chariots and horses, as well as fortified cities and armor. So, as soon as this letter reaches you, choose the best and most suitable of your master's sons, set him on his father's throne and fight for your master's dynasty." They were panic-stricken and said, "If the other two kings couldn't withstand him, how will we?" So the administrator of the palace, the governor of the city, the leaders and the children's guardians sent this message to Jehu: "We are your servants. We will do everything you ask us to. We won't appoint anyone king. Do as you see fit." He wrote a second letter to them, which said, "If you are on my side, and if you are ready to obey my orders, then bring the heads of your master's sons to me in Israel by this time tomorrow." Now the 70 sons of the king were with the prominent men who had raised them. When the letter reached them, they seized the king's sons and killed them, all 70 of them, put their heads in baskets and sent them to Jehu in Israel. A messenger came and told him, "They have brought the heads of the king's sons." He said, "Leave them in 2 piles at the entrance of the city gate until morning." When morning came, he went out, stood before the people and said, "You are not responsible for the deaths of these men. Yes, I conspired against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? Understand, then, that no part of Adonai's word which Adonai spoke concerning the dynasty of Achav falls to the ground, because Adonai has done what he said through his servant Eliyahu." So Jehu killed everyone who remained from the house of Achav in Israel, all his leading men, his close friends and his Kohanim, until not one of them was left alive. Then he set out and went to Shomron. On the way he reached a shearing shed for shepherds, where he encountered relatives of Achaziah king of Yehuda. "Who are you?" he asked. "We're relatives of Achaziah," they answered, "and we're going down to pay our respects to the families of the king and of the queen mother." "Take them alive," said Jehu. They took them alive, 42 men, slaughtered them and threw them into the shearing shed's pit. He spared not one of them. On leaving there, he happened upon Yonadav the son of Rechab coming toward him. He greeted him and said to him, "Are you wholeheartedly with me, as I am with you?" "Yes," answered Yonadav. "If so, give me your hand." He gave him his hand, and Jehu took him up into the chariot. He said, "Come with me, and see how zealous I am for Adonai." So they had him ride in his chariot. On arriving in Shomron, he put to death everyone that Achav still had in Shomron, until he had destroyed him, in keeping with the word of Adonai which he had spoken to Eliyahu. Next, Jehu assembled all the people and said to them, "Achav served Baal in limited measure, but Jehu will serve him with full zeal. Therefore summon all the prophets of Baal to me, all his worshippers and all his priests. None of them is to be missing, because I am going to offer a great sacrifice to Baal. Whoever is missing will not remain alive." But Jehu was setting a trap, in order to destroy the worshippers of Baal. Jehu said, "Proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal," and they did so. Jehu sent throughout all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not one man left that didn't come. They entered the temple of Baal, and the temple of Baal was filled from one end to the other. To the man in charge of the wardrobe he said, Bring out robes for all the worshippers of Baal, and he brought them clothes. Jehu and Jonadab the son of Rechab entered the house of Baal and said to the worshippers of Baal, Search to see that none of the servants of Adonai is here with you, only worshippers of Baal. Then they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings. But Jehu had chosen 80 men to remain outside. He said, If any of the men I am about to put in your hands escapes, it will be your life for his. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, Jehu said to the guards and officers, Go in and kill them. Don't let one of them get out. So they killed them with the sword. Then, after the guards and officers had thrown their bodies outside, they went into the temple of Baal's inner shrine, brought out the pillars in the temple of Baal and burned them. Finally, they broke down Baal's standing stone and demolished the temple of Baal, converting it into a latrine, which it still is today. Thus Jehu rid Israel of Baal. Jehu departs not from the sins of Jeroboam. However, Jehu did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nevat, with which he had led Israel into sin, the gold calves that were in Beth-el and Dan. Adonai said to Jehu, Because you did well in accomplishing what is right from my perspective, and have done to the house of Achav everything that was in my heart, your descendants down to the 4th generation will sit on the throne of Israel. But Jehu made no effort to live wholeheartedly according to the Torah of Adonai the God of Israel, and did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, with which he had led Israel into sin. The nations under Jehu. It was during that period that Adonai began to dismember Israel. Hazael attacked them throughout the territory of Israel. East of the Jordan, all the land of Gilead, the Gadi, Reuven and Manasseh, from Aroer by the Arnon River, including Gilead and Bashan. The death of Jehu. Other activities of Jehu, all his accomplishments and all his power are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Jehu slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in Shomron. Then Jehoahaz his son became king in his place. Jehu ruled over Israel in Shomron for 28 years. 2 Kings chapter 11. The salvation of Joash. When Athaliah the mother of Achaziah saw that her son was dead, she set about destroying the entire royal family. But Josheba the daughter of King Joram, sister of Achaziah, took Joash the son of Achaziah and stole him away from among the princes who were being slaughtered. She took him and his nurse, sequestered them in a bedroom, and hid them from Athaliah, so that he was not killed. He remained hidden with his nurse in the house of Adonai for 6 years. During this time, Athaliah ruled the land. The overthrow of Athaliah. In the 7th year Joiada summoned the captains of 100-man platoons, of both the carry and the guard. He brought them into the house of Adonai, made an agreement with them and had them swear to it in the house of Adonai. Then he showed him the king's son, and gave them this instruction: Here is what you are to do. Of you who come on duty on Shabbat, a third, normally, guards the royal palace. A third is at the sword gate and a third is at the gate behind the guards. The first third is to continue guarding the palace and serve as a barrier, while the other 2 groups of you who come on duty on Shabbat will guard the house of Adonai, where the king is. You are to surround the king, each man with his weapons in his hand. Anyone who penetrates the ranks is to be killed. Stay with the king whenever he leaves or enters. The captains over hundreds did exactly as Yoyada the Kohen ordered. Each took his men, those coming on duty on Shabbat and those going off duty on Shabbat, and came to Yoyada the Kohen. The Kohen issued to the captains of hundreds the spears and shields that had been King David's and were kept in the house of Adonai. The guards then took positions, each man with his weapons in his hand, from the right side of the house to the left side of the house, alongside the altar, alongside the exterior of the house and around the king. Then he brought out the king's son, crowned him, gave him a copy of the testimony and thus made him king. They anointed him, clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king." The death of Athaliah. When Athaliah heard the shouting of the guard and the people, she entered the house of Adonai where the people were. Looked and saw the king standing there on the platform, in keeping with the rule, with the leaders and trumpeters next to the king. All the people of the land were celebrating and blowing the trumpets. At this, Athaliah tore her clothes and cried, "Treason! Treason!" Yoyada the Kohen ordered the captains of hundreds, the army officers, escort her out past the ranks of guards, but anyone who follows her, kill with the sword. For the Kohen had said, she must not be put to death in the house of Adonai. So they took her by force and led her through the horses' entry to the royal palace, and there she was put to death. The renewal of the covenant. Yoyada made a covenant between Adonai, the king and the people, that they would be Adonai's people, and a covenant between the king and the people. Then all the people of the land went to the house of Baal and broke it down. They completely smashed its altars and images and killed Mattan the priest of Baal in front of the altars. Next, the Kohen appointed officers over the house of Adonai. He took the captains of hundreds, the carry, the guards and all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of Adonai, going by way of the gate of the guards to the royal palace. There he sat on the throne of the kings. All the people of the land celebrated, and at last the city was quiet. That is how they killed Athaliah with the sword at the royal palace. 2 Kings chapter 12. Jehoash does right. Jehoash was 7 years old when he began his reign. It was in the 7th year of Jehu that Jehoash began to rule, and he ruled 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Sivia, from Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right from Adonai's perspective throughout the lifetime of Yoyada the Kohen, who instructed him. The spiritual state of the nation under Jehoash. Nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and presented offerings on the high places. Jehoash said to the Kohanim, "All the funds for sacred purposes which are brought to the house of Adonai, the half-shekel tax, the taxes on persons in a man's household, and all the offerings anyone voluntarily brings to the house of Adonai. The Kohanim are to receive from whoever personally makes contributions to them, and they are to use these funds to repair the damaged parts of the house, wherever damage is found." But 23 years into the reign of King Jehoash, the Kohanim had still not repaired the damaged places in the house. So King Jehoash summoned Yoyada the Kohen and the other Kohanim and said to them, "Why aren't you repairing the damaged places in the house? Therefore, you are no longer to take money from those who contribute it personally to you. You must hand it over to be used for repairing the damage in the house." The Kohanim agreed not to receive money from the people, and they would no longer be responsible for repairing the damage to the house. Then Yoyada the Kohen took a chest, drilled a hole in its lid and set it by the altar, on the right, as one enters the house of Adonai, and the Kohanim in charge of the entry put in it all the money brought into the house of Adonai. When they saw that there was a large amount of money in the chest, the king's secretary and the Kohen Haggadol would come up, count the money found in the house of Adonai and put it in bags. Then they would give the weighed-out money to those supervising the work in the house of Adonai, who would use it to pay the carpenters and construction workers doing the work in the house of Adonai. On masons, stone workers, timber, worked stone and everything else needed for repairing the damaged places in the house of Adonai. But none of the money brought into the house of Adonai was used to make silver cups, snuffers, bowls, trumpets or other articles of gold or silver for the house of Adonai. Because they gave the money to those doing the work, thus restricting its use to repairing the damage in the house of Adonai. Moreover, they did not require an accounting from the supervisors given the money to pay the workers, because they dealt honestly. The nations under Jehoash. Money from guilt offerings and sin offerings, however, was not brought into the house of Adonai, it went to the Kohanim. Hazael king of Aram went up and fought against Gat, and after capturing it, Hazael made his decision to attack Jerusalem. The death of Joash. Joash king of Yehuda took all the consecrated articles that Jehoshaphat, Joram and Achaziah, his ancestors, kings of Yehuda, had dedicated, as well as his own consecrated articles and all the gold found in the treasuries of the house of Adonai and of the royal palace, and sent them to Hazael king of Aram, who then withdrew from Jerusalem. Other activities of Joash and all his accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. Then his servants got together, formed a conspiracy and murdered Joash at Beit Millo on the way down to Selah. His servants Jozachar the son of Shimart and Jozabad the son of Shomer struck him, so that he died. They buried him with his ancestors in the city of David, and Amaziah his son took his place as king. 2 Kings chapter 13. The reign of Jehoahaz over Israel. It was in the 23rd year of Joash the son of Achaziah, king of Yehuda, that Jehoahaz the son of Jehu began his reign over Israel in Shomron. He ruled for 17 years. He did what was evil from Adonai's perspective. He followed the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nevat, who made Israel sin, and he never ceased committing those sins. Adonai's anger burned against Israel, and he kept handing him over to Hazael king of Aram and Ben-Hadad the son of Hazael. But Jehoahaz pleaded to Adonai, and Adonai listened to him, because he saw the oppression the king of Aram was inflicting on Israel. So Adonai gave Israel a savior who freed them from the grip of Aram, so that the people of Israel could live in their tents, as they had before. Despite that, instead of turning from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, who made Israel sin, they continued to live in this sinful way. Moreover, the Asherah continued to stand in Shomron. The king of Aram destroyed Jehoahaz's army, making them like chaff when grain is threshed, except for 50 horsemen, 10 chariots and 10,000 foot soldiers. Other activities of Jehoahaz, all his accomplishments and his power are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Jehoahaz slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in Shomron. Then Joash his son took his place as king. The rule of Jehoash. It was in the 37th year of Joash king of Yehuda that Joash the son of Jehoahaz began his rule over Israel in Shomron. He ruled for 16 years. He did what was evil from Adonai's perspective and did not turn from all the sins of Yerovam the son of Nevat, who made Israel sin. On the contrary, he lived in this sinful way. Other activities of Joash, all his accomplishments and his power in fighting Amaziah king of Yehuda are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Joash slept with his ancestors, and Yerovam occupied his throne. Joash was buried in Shomron with the kings of Israel. The prophecy of Israel's victory. Elisha was now ill with the disease from which he would eventually die. Joash the king of Israel came down to visit him and wept over him. He said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." Elisha said to him, "Bring a bow and arrows," and he brought him a bow and arrows. He said to the king of Israel, "Put your hand on the bow," and he put his hand on it. Then Elisha laid his hands on the king's hands and said, "Open the east window." He opened it. Elisha said, "Shoot," and he shot. He said, "Adonai's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory against Aram. You will defeat Aram completely at Aphek." He said, "Take the arrows," and he took them. He told the king of Israel, "Strike the ground." He struck 3 times, then stopped. The man of God became angry with him. He said, "You should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have defeated Aram completely. As it is, you will defeat Aram only 3 times. The death of Elisha. Elisha died, and they placed him in a burial cave. Now the raiding parties of Moab used to make yearly incursions into the land at the start of the year. Resurrection at the tomb of Elisha. Once it happened that just as they were burying a man, they spotted a raiding party. So they threw the man's body into Elisha's burial cave, and the moment the man touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood on his feet. Israel's victory over Syria. Hazael king of Aram oppressed Israel throughout the lifetime of Jehoahaz. But Adonai was gracious, took pity on them and looked on them with favor, because of his covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak and Yaakov. He was not willing to destroy them, and to this day he has not banished them from his presence. Hazael king of Aram died, and Ben-Hadad his son took his place as king. Then Joash the son of Jehoahaz captured from Ben-Hadad the son of Hazael the cities which he had captured in war from Jehoahaz his father. 3 times Joash defeated him, thus recovering the cities of Israel.